Exploring the human journey.
Hi and welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. Gail and I are in Los Angeles at the Conscious Life Expo, and we were walking around and we ran into an extremely interesting individual. This is Terry Lee Brussel. She's a certified clinical hypnotherapist and a fourth generation matchmaker. I'm so glad we got to meet you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hold on. You said fourth generation matchmaker?
So not the first or the second or the third,
but the fourth.
And my granddaughter, who's going around talking to the people at booths at this show, is a sixth generation matchmaker who actually has made matches at this show in a singles mixer that we filmed when she was 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
She's now 28.
I like the hypnotherapy. I'm totally into that, but this matchmaker thing just totally caught me off guard.
Yeah, maybe give us a little presence about that.
I got to hear a little bit of the background on this one.
Well, in the late 1800s, my great-grandma Leia was a matchmaker in Russia. She had her business in Minsk and Pinsk. And then the family came over here to Chicago, and she ran her matchmaking business in Chicago for many years until the family moved to Los Angeles because my uncles were actually involved with Al Capone, and they had to get rid of a batch of bootleg liquor, and they got rid of it by flushing it down the toilet because they were being chased by the police. And so Al Capone made them move away and get out of town and so forth. And it might have done worse to them, except that my great-grandma Leia was very... he thought very well of her.
Of course.
Because she had a restaurant there, and she actually fed the ladies of the night instead of refusing to allow them to come into her restaurant.
Well, taking care of the people around you. Yeah, that's good.
Right. So great-grandma Leia was well known for being a very caring and loving person. And she made lots of good matches. And then when my father grew up here in Los Angeles, he wanted to get into matchmaking himself and got involved with Frances Dumont's social club as her publicist, because my dad owned an advertising agency. My dad is actually Barry Leon Brussel. He's passed now, but he was the one who started the hula hoop craze in the 50s. He was Whammo's advertising man. So quite a background.
Yeah.
My mother and my father met through Frances Dumont's social club, and when Frances passed on, she left it to my dad, who ran it as Romantic Holidays for many, many years. And then when I was 22, passed it to me, and I renamed it Marriage Minded Introductions. And I ran Marriage Minded Introductions for 40 years.
So you're like the original app. Your family is like the original app.
Matchmaker app. So good.
And today, because there's online dating and so forth, I really believe that there aren't any personal matchmakers who have enough of a database to do what OkCupid does, mostly for free. Yeah. But people who get involved with OkCupid need a guide. They need to know how to use it properly, how to use it safely, because it's not entirely safe meeting people online. And they also need to know how to figure out what their own best match is, so they can become the right person for that best match.
Oh, interesting.
In other words, if you are your highest image of who you want to be, you will attract the right person for you, your proper life mate.
Yeah, so now you're working
with
that internal energy is projected and you're attracting that same thing.
Now, the whole time I was doing Marriage Minded, of course, I was also a hypnotherapist. I started that in 1969 when I was 16 years old. I graduated from the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, their youngest student ever. I started when I was 13, graduated just before I turned 16, and started my practice at the age of 16.
Oh, that's incredible.
Wow.
And so you've been an entrepreneur and you're...
Right. I've done both Marriage Minded Introductions and the Success Center all those years. And today I still help people to find their own best match, whether it's online or in their local church singles group or whatever. Wherever they choose to find somebody, I help them to choose, find, and attract the best person for them. And the hypnotherapy works beautifully with that, because if you are a little bit overweight, you might want to release that weight, whether you are male or female, and look better. So that helps you to find the right match. And if you are a man and you want to meet somebody absolutely wonderful and you're a day laborer, this isn't too likely to happen. So perhaps you need to develop the will to learn and the desire to be more than you are right now if you want to get this special, wonderful lady. And I've had people do that and really rise to the highest level they're capable of. What my whole business is about is helping people to reach their highest potential, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially.
So I would think that you get a lot of people out of like their relationship loops, you know, where you've got somebody who continually gets caught up with the wrong type of person, whether they're
That's called
abusive
partnering
or
patterns. Yes,
Yeah.
you bet. And people who are choosing continually the wrong person are probably doing it because they've gotten stuck in poor partnering patterns. They might be always attracted to somebody who has that sleepy look in his eye, like their first boyfriend who was an alcoholic or their father who was an alcoholic. You might have people who are always getting involved with women that nag them because their mother did that, or maybe their first girlfriend.
Isn't that interesting how you get into that thing that feels comfortable, even if it's something that's not maybe good for you? You're just like, well, at least it's comfortable for me.
Yes, so I help people release their negative partnering patterns and consciously pick the right person for them. If they've been getting involved in abusive relationships, we have a whole program for that, including a recording for avoiding and recovering from abusive relationships.
Wow.
And I have, of course, a complete private session program for that as well.
Is that a physical, a verbal, a mental? What type of abuse?
It's all kinds of abuse.
Is it a pervasive thing that you see coming up again? Or is
Yes,
there patterns?
it is. There are many people who get involved in verbally abusive relationships, and they don't even count themselves as being in an abusive relationship. There are others who get involved with actual physical abuse. And there's a kind of emotional abuse that goes beyond just verbal abuse and becomes, we have somebody right now who is a brilliant hypnotherapist. And I work more with hypnotherapists, coaches, and healers these days than I do with private clients. But this one had been abused in ways that were just unimaginable. And she's managed to pull herself together and go back into her business, partially with the help that I'm giving her.
Oh, I love that.
So hypnotherapy is really important to me. Gail and I have had these
absolutely.
experiences. Give some presence to some people might be watching this and they're just like, hypnotherapy, is that the thing with the watch and you hypnotize someone? Give presence to the process, the science behind it, the getting that active mind to get out of the way, the guy with the checklist and making sure, getting that guy to relax a little bit so that you can get into your subconscious.
Well, actually, we do that in a little bit different way than you might be thinking.
Tell me more.
I teach self-hypnosis as well as hypnotizing people.
Okay.
And whoever that little guy with the check marks is that you're talking about, he can actually get a new job and help them to reach their highest potential by being a co-hypnotist and actually working with their own minds.
Okay.
I teach people to reach their own goals and deal with their own challenges and so forth. So while I do hypnosis, when they go home, they're going to be reinforcing that hypnosis. Now, you may have known somebody who quit smoking or lost weight through hypnosis and later on the problem came back. Well, that can sure happen. That's because they are given a suggestion and then they go off somewhere and now they're not given a suggestion for weeks, months, or years and the problem comes back. If they learn self-hypnosis, they are reinforcing that suggestion on a regular basis. So they stay non-smokers. They stay free of excess weight, which, since we're talking about quitting smoking and losing weight, brings us to non-smoker rather than ex-smoker. A non-smoker never even thinks about cigarettes. An ex-smoker always wants to go back to it.
That's
The way
great.
we turn people into non-smokers is they learn how to relax, they learn greater self-awareness, greater self-control. We work with emotional awareness, control, and expression. Then through the hypnotic age regression, we go back to whatever caused that reliance on cigarettes to begin with, change their attitude towards past events in their lives. So it's as though they never smoked. They become a non-smoker rather than an ex-smoker.
I like that.
And
It just has a different feel
Like
about.
repatterning that.
Yeah.
I'll never forget walking into a restaurant many, many years ago before smoking was banned in places like restaurants in California. And I was with a friend of mine who I'd actually done the Stop Smoking program with. And they asked us, would we like smoking or non-smoking? And he immediately said non-smoking. And I said, boy, that's good to hear. And he gave me this very puzzled look like, What do you mean? Of course I'm a non-smoker.
Oh,
Wow.
He literally didn't even think about being a smoker.
yeah.
He was a non-smoker, and that's the way he thought of himself.
I like that.
That's a great change as far as the mind, because
Yeah.
we get into this is who I am, this is my identity, and you're actually repatterning that identity.
Exactly. Sometimes a person's identity is all tied up with whatever their problem is.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
comes in and they say, I'm a diabetic, that's what I am.
Yeah.
Well,
you
if they're
go.
a type 2 diabetic, they can get rid of that problem.
Mm.
And I watched my dad do it, and I watched the man who his face is actually on our Living Healthy with Diabetes recording. He got rid of it, Carl. He got rid of it. And it's a matter of healthy eating, healthy exercise, and really taking care of your body and deciding I want to release the excess weight. And a person who's a type 2 diabetic doesn't have to have that as their identity.
Yeah.
As long as they have it as their identity, they're hanging on to it for dear life.
It's amazing. People, that's how people identify. It's this cultural thing that they were taught to identify with their disease,
Yes.
their weight, their all of
It's
that.
that victimhood.
Yeah.
And as much as AA is a wonderful thing, and I've referred people to it, standing up and saying, hello, I'm John and I am an
Yeah.
alcoholic,
Over
and you're
over.
thinking of yourself
Boom.
as that for your lifestyle
Yeah.
and for your life identity, is it really helping
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm John, and perhaps I used to be involved with alcohol, but today I'm a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
a lot better,
Yeah.
I think.
I 100%
That's a reframe.
agree.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of exploring the human journey is understanding that we are spiritual beings having this human experience.
Exactly.
And what's been really interesting to me is to get to see how me as a spiritual being came here to have a human experience. So when I read Dr. Michael Newton's Journey of Souls, it gave me a brand new idea, which I had never heard before, called pre-birth planning. And I was like,
Right.
pre-birth planning? Growing up in a religious mindset, in that construct of you're born, then you get a soul, and then you live your life, and then you die, and then there's a judgment, and you get a one and done. This gave me a new idea that, wait, you are a spiritual being, you've already done this before, you've had many times, this is your next time, and you actually planned your pre-birth planning.
I actually started doing past life regression work at HMI, the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, originally when I was 13, 14, 15 years old and taking those classes there. But I discovered at one point that as I was doing past life regression, I knew what that person was going to tell me about their past lives before they told me it under hypnosis.
You were feeling it intuitively.
I was a past life reader.
Oh.
See, in my family, the healing abilities and the psychic abilities are passed from grandmother to granddaughter.
Oh.
So I was trained both by my grandmother and also by my father, who was her only son, so it was passed to him.
So it like skips a generation?
Nope, it actually passes to each one, but the grandmother usually trains the granddaughter.
Oh, gotcha.
But she trained my father because he was her only child, so he trained me, and so did she. And when I was 5 years old, I was helping people get rid of headaches and touching them to get rid of the headaches.
Wow.
So like
So I did
healing.
it all, yeah, healing. And then I discovered that I could do past life readings simply by doing past life regressions as a hypnotist, and realizing that I could do this without hypnosis. I could just read them. And I did that for quite a while. I still do it when somebody asks for it. I always tell my clients, if I get some information on the etheric plane, no extra charge for psychic readings. You're paying me for hypnosis and
That's right.
coaching here.
That's right. A little,
Well-
little tip, a little benefit.
We're always open. So if something comes about, you can share. I just give you that permission.
Somebody's knocking
Thank
on your
you.
door right there. Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Have you done the life between lives?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I have.
Tell us some of your experiences that you've felt.
Well,
and seen.
when first of all, I always recommend reading The Journey of Souls. I find that really helps people to open their minds about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then what I work with is helping someone to go to that time between lives where they know their life mission, consult with spirit guides, their higher selves, the souls they'll be with this time around. Like you mentioned, you'd spoken to your children and found out why they picked you as their father and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
We do all of that. And then we do past life regression work to help them regain past life knowledge and experience that's useful in this life. I had one student who came into me for help with public speaking. He was in a beginning public speaking class in college. And he was stumbling over his words. He had real problems with his confidence. And I helped him with that. I helped him develop more confidence, more ability to speak. I do speech coaching as well as hypnotherapy. I did my first speech when my Flag Day essay suddenly became my Flag Day speech in front of 500 people when I was 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And my teacher suddenly decided it was so good she wanted me to do it as a speech.
Oh,
And I decided I have a choice. I can get up there and do it, or I can faint or something. And I got up there and did it.
Yeah.
Then I did all my graduation speaking and all that, and spoke at class days and all this kind of thing. And of course, I do professional speaking now. So this student that had been having difficulty in speaking class came back to the speaking class and was doing a little bit better, and he no longer had his palms sweating and so forth when he was getting up to speak. And just for the fun of it, he decided he wanted a past life regression. Well, it turned out that in a past life, he had been an elder statesman. He had been a superb public speaker. And suddenly it all came back to him, and suddenly he was speaking with drama and with pauses in the right places, and in a way that reached every member of his audience. And once he did that, the teacher wanted to throw him out of class for playing a hoax on on her, because obviously he was a superb speaker. He didn't need a beginning speaking class, and he shouldn't be there, right? And I had to actually alibi him to the teacher, explain what had happened, and he spent the rest of the class as a teacher's assistant, helping the other students to speak more effectively.
Oh, that's incredible.
I love it. I love it. So while we were thinking about this, the Life Between Lives that I had done, there was a part of it where she brought me back to the place where I was a soul getting ready to go into the body. And I was very resistant. I still feel that. Like I just had a really hard time wanting to be embodied.
There are times when a soul doesn't want to go back into the body, and at that point you can, depending on what your guides feel is right for you, if you are an old soul who's had many, many lifetimes and your guides feel if you don't want to go back, you should have some more time where you are, then you just won't come back for a while.
Okay.
And if you are resisting for some other reason, if you are resisting because you are afraid of something that you might find when you come back in your body, afraid of something you might have to deal with, the usual thing is that I found your guides will sort of ease you out in that direction and say, yes, you need to go deal with this.
Kick in the butt.
Yep.
Get in there.
Yeah, it can be a kick in the butt rather than an ease, and you're right. But that if the issue is that you don't want to come back yet because you have more things to learn on the other side, then you're allowed to go and study for a while and come back when you're ready.
Interesting. Well, are you glad I came?
Oh my God. Yeah, we've had these experiences where Gail's like, we had an experience where we did some psychedelic mushrooms, and we got ourselves into a space where, like, oh, I feel a different meditative energy, that kind of space where when you're in hypnotherapy, and Gail was like, oh, I don't want to be here. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to be here? She goes like, I want to go back to my home. And I'm like, what do you mean you want to go back to your home? I'm like, that to me means you want to die. And I was freaking out.
And I didn't feel that. I just wanted to go back home.
Yeah.
I didn't want to die.
So she's crying. She's like, I just feel like I want to go back home. And I'm like, yeah, but this is your home. We're here. So we worked our way out of it. We weren't out of consciousness. We were just in a state of
Well, I do recommend
vibration.
that anybody who's going to use this sort of thing do it with a good ground crew.
Yeah.
I did. I had a good ground crew.
We had a facilitator.
Oh, you weren't by yourselves?
No, we weren't by
Oh,
ourselves.
okay.
And then our facilitator took us across the street to where there was a big tree, and Gail just held
grounded.
on to the tree.
That's good.
And then these baby ducks came all around her.
They did. I had they were just probably a few months old. There were about 10 of them, and they just came up and surrounded me.
And they were just little wah, wah, wah. And it was dark. It was later in the evening.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
She was like, oh, I think the ducks are telling me that I need to be here for the other babies in the world that I'm going to help. And I'm like, that works for me.
What you folks are doing right now is going to probably help a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're bringing conversations of all kinds to the camera here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're interviewing healers and coaches and people who are making a difference in the world, that's going to matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we're all in this consciousness raising work. You've got the things that you're doing, and we're so interested in what your human journey is giving you. And then this gives us the ability to connect, and it's just a platform to continue to raise consciousness.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to talk a little about what makes this different than other programs out there of hypnosis.
Tell us
Yeah,
more.
it's quite different.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it different is that I work with the 7 keys to self-actualization.
Ooh, I wrote those down.
Right.
Those were fascinating to me.
And that starts with learning self-hypnosis, developing emotional awareness, control, and expression, the ability to make decisions more effectively by getting in touch with your subconscious mind through ideomotor response, which if the answer is yes, you'll get a yes answer. If the answer is no, you get a no answer, or use pendulums.
We got to experience that. We went to
That's
the
all.
Southwest Institute of Healing
I
Arts.
do
We
that.
took a little thing.
So that's all
We're
ideomotor
like-
response.
Yeah.
And that you're getting in direct contact with your subconscious mind. Now, you see, if you are, let's say you try to study and you're not really getting any studying done, you're thinking about going to the beach, you've got your conscious and your subconscious mind fighting each other.
Yeah.
So you're really not getting any studying done, but you're also not getting to enjoy the beach.
Ah.
So what we do is we orchestrate a kind of conversation between your conscious and your subconscious mind, so that first you study and you do it beautifully, and then you go to the beach and do that beautifully and enjoy both.
Mm-hmm.
And then your conscious and subconscious mind are moving in the same direction.
You know, I feel that energy
like
when
that.
I'm reading a book. I'll turn a page and realize I don't remember anything I've done for the past 5 minutes.
Right.
Can you help with that?
Yes. Well, especially if you mean you're losing the information you've taken in over the last
I'm
5
sitting
minutes.
here reading this book thinking about the material, and then I realize I'm not even reading this book anymore, even though my
Right.
words.
But your eyes are still moving along the page.
Yeah.
I know.
Yes. That's my next key, interestingly enough, the copper key, which is for students and for anybody who has to learn something, including passing the bar. And it might be for somebody who just wants to learn more about the profession they've been in for 30 years. And I've gotten plenty of those who are in real estate or sales of various kinds, and there are ways to gather more information. So in the bronze key, the first key, we start with the will to learn. And that's probably the most important thing that one can have. If you have the will to learn and the determination to use what you learn to make your goals a reality, there's nothing you can't have.
Sometimes we get in these spaces where we're like, I want to learn something, but we don't necessarily want to put the time or the effort into it.
Right. You need to have a hunger for knowledge that's
Okay.
the same as a hunger for food or a thirst for water. It needs to be primary. It needs to be part of you. And that's what this does, is make it part of you. Now, that leads us to the next thing, which is the copper key, as we were discussing. And you get photographic memory, speed reading, recording a lecture or a symphony in your mind, using your subconscious mind like a computer, mental data correlation, everything that you need to be the best learner you can possibly be. And then if I discover that somebody is having difficulty with test taking, not because they haven't studied or learned the material, or not because they don't remember the material, but because they're panicking when it's time to take a test on that material, then we do a hypnotic regression for rewriting your life script so that you react to potentially stressful situations with physical relaxation, emotional calm, and mental problem-solving behavior, instead of by getting sweaty palms or blanking on the test-taking material or any of the myriad number of other things people might do when they're under stress. I work a lot with people who get panic attacks.
That's
Now,
good.
you can get a panic attack by taking a test. You can get it by just walking out into a supermarket or whatever.
Yeah.
I did a lot of work with this in my early 20s because I started hiring people to answer my phone, and they were answering the phone from home because you could forward the phone, and I had them doing that and getting paid a percentage for every appointment they signed up and that sort of thing. But I found that a lot of them had problems with being able to leave the house. That's why they wanted a job like this. So, of course, I got rid of that problem for them with hypnosis, and then they quit. So first I was doing it in 6 weeks, and then I was doing it in 4 weeks. And when I got down to 3 weeks, I refused to hire these people. I said, look, I will help you get rid of your problem, but I'm not hiring you to answer my phone.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, another thing about staying at home is as we drive around in LA traffic, I understand why people just don't go outside anymore. It's such a challenge just to commute around.
Well, that's true, but you want to make a choice to stay home, not
Yeah,
have
I
to
get
stay
it.
home.
I get it.
Right.
There are people whose lives are not real pleasant because they literally can't go out to get their hair done, or they can't go out to do, play golf even because they just can't get out of the house. It's agoraphobia.
Yeah.
Well, I've known
It's
a lot of
serious.
people like that where they just can't breathe, they get short of breath,
Yes.
which continues to give more panic attack. Is that
Exactly.
is that a how do you give me an
Well-
example of a self-hypnosis for that?
Well, I have an exact one, actually. We work with Cell Command, which was actually developed by Ed Martin, who's a hypnotherapist. And I learned that at a American Council of Hypnotist Examiners convention back in the 80s.
Jeez, that's a
Wow.
word, a mouthful.
Mhm. And I also learned it before that. There's some question as to who really came up with this technique because Al Lane was my office partner when I was running Marriage Minded Introductions back in my 20s, and he also told me about this technique. Today, I usually attribute it more to Dr. Deepak Chopra, who's a medical doctor, and he's discovered that we're constantly rebuilding our bodies on the cellular level. You rebuild the lining of your mouth about every 3 days. You rebuild your liver about every 6 weeks. You rebuild your entire skeletal system in less than a year, according to Dr. Chopra. And you can choose to rebuild them stronger and healthier or weaker and more elderly.
Oh.
So what we can do is accelerate that so that you are rebuilding a system that does not have panic attacks, that does not have the physical symptoms of panic attacks. We can release them completely.
So that's part
First-
of rejuvenation?
That's part of rejuvenation,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm going to get into that a little later.
Wait a
So-
sec. You said something. You said you can regenerate actually in a negative way.
Yeah, you can regenerate negatively or positively. People who are going around looking like they are 80 when they are 60 are regenerating in a negative way. We see a lot of them.
Oh my.
Yeah.
People who are
I
going
never thought
around
of
looking like they're 40 when they're 60 are doing it the other way. And we see a lot of
Okay.
those too out there.
Wow.
Some of them are doing it through yoga and other techniques that are for that, and this technique. And others are doing it because it's natural to them to believe that since grandma looked good when she was 60, they can do that too. Somebody who has observed that grandma looked like she was dying when she was 60, looked old and decrepit and so forth, well, guess what? They think that's the way you have to be at that age.
Yeah.
So some of this is just modeling behavior, and some of it is you have to actually speak to the cells of your body on the subconscious level and tell them what you want them to do. And I've used that for so many different things. For, let's say, getting rid of colds and allergies. Somebody who is having a severe cold and has been told by the doctor it'll probably last a couple of weeks or something is now going to be sick for a couple of weeks because they listen to the doctor.
Man.
However, if they have to sing tomorrow and they're a professional singer who will lose many thousands of dollars by not being able to do that tomorrow, we better have another answer.
Yeah.
And that's my Stop Colds and Allergies.
Wow.
Wow.
My hypnotic
So you're
recording
creating
for that.
mental image and that mindset.
It says you have a clear, vibrant, beautiful voice.
Yeah.
You expect to have a clear, vibrant, beautiful voice. And when I'm doing private sessions, of course, for the singing engagement tomorrow, I'll put that in too. But just the recording has on it that they're going to have a clear, vibrant, effective voice and free of all symptoms of colds and allergies. And their body starts doing that.
Yeah.
The body can heal tremendously.
Yeah.
In my own particular case, I spent a lot of time in a wheelchair.
Oh.
Even going to healers'
Wow.
conventions, which was very embarrassing because I thought, well, I haven't, let me heal you, and I thought I should heal myself.
Yeah.
I have spinal stenosis,
Wow.
and I've still got it. You can check it in an X-ray, but what I did with it was I made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to let that mess up my life. I had a trip to Europe where I was trying to get everything done in that one trip because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to transfer from my wheelchair to see things you couldn't see from a wheelchair. And I was afraid the next time I came, I'd be permanently in that wheelchair. The doctor said that I was going to be permanently in the wheelchair unless I had dangerous back surgery. Well, I did not have dangerous back surgery. I did not have anything like that. I had hypnosis and chiropractic and vitamins, and mostly hypnosis, frankly, because it was the change in mindset that let the other things work.
Yeah.
And today I walk, I run, I ride my bicycle, I got the wheelchair lift taken off my car, And that was a wonderful day.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I love it.
Because that was my mobility.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I had to rely on somebody else to push me or whatever, and I had to rely on them at least to get the electric scooter off of there. I got an electric scooter for a while. And now I don't need that sort of thing at all. And I'm 65, and I can do things I couldn't even do when I was 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
You have to keep your health and your body going to give you that feeling like you have the will to do things.
Yes.
And I know with most of us, we don't think, what's the number one thing we want? Oh, we want money. We don't think about our health like that, because if you don't have your health, what's it matter what money or success you have?
Right. Sometimes I tell people that they don't want to take a session because they don't want to spend the money on it, and they need it for their health. I've got one person right now who had a session with me, and she had a depression that had gone to a point of actually trying suicide. And she's telling me she doesn't want to take sessions for this because she doesn't want to spend the money, and she wants to go out there and make a lot more money and so forth. And she tried to kill herself. And I'm dumbfounded. Who do you want to be? The richest corpse in the cemetery?
Right.
Wow. Yeah, that's good.
Wow. It's ridiculous.
And there's something about that energy exchange too, when you allow yourself to say, oh, this is no longer an insurmountable number, this fee to pay for whatever, when you're like, oh yeah, it's fine because I've raised that energy level of money's just an energy.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I show people how to make money. So anybody who wants to make a lot of money, taking sessions with me for whatever it is, whether it's depression or whether it's creativity or success or you name it, I'm going to help them make money because I think that way.
Now, you come from a long line of entrepreneurs, and that's one of the things you love to do is to help people become entrepreneurs.
Well, one of the things last night I did a lecture on the spiritual entrepreneur. I've actually determined that my ideal client is the spiritual entrepreneur, which is why I wanted to give a lecture for them.
Nice.
The spiritual entrepreneur is a spiritual person in themselves and wants to grow to reach their own highest potential, and they're paying attention to that. They also want to make a good living. And the best thing is if they make a good living doing what they're passionate about that is in alignment with their spiritual goals. And those are the people I really want to work with. Now, there are hypnotherapists, coaches, and healers of all kinds out there, and some of them call themselves psychics, and some of them call themselves medical intuitives, and you name it. And they're doing guided meditation with their work. As far as I'm concerned, you're a hypnotist. Just call it anything you want, But a lot of them think there's some kind of advantage to being out there starving doing that. In other words, they're saying, well, I get paid, $50 for an hour of my time, and then people can afford me and so forth. But all they're showing people is how to get, how not to be successful. And when I was 16 years old, I started off doing sessions for $75 an hour. And if they took 4 sessions, I'd get them for $50 each. I'd get them for $200. And that's what I did in 1969 at the age of 16.
Wow.
When I find hypnotists today charging $50 or $75 an hour for their time, I'm appalled. That is totally unacceptable. I have one lady who is a doctor who was doing that.
Wow.
She's changing it now. But she was a doctor, and she thought she couldn't take her medical knowledge and reputation into the field of hypnotherapy. So here she is charging something like $50 an hour for her time. And I said, you stop this immediately. You raise your prices tomorrow. And you know what? When she did, she got the extra money. Because people expect to pay that to somebody who has an MD behind their name, regardless of whatever else they're doing. And she was really studying and seriously using hypnotherapy on top of her medical degree.
It's funny when you find that person that's really cheap, you're really happy until you realize, well, wait a minute, they're really cheap. Maybe they're not that good. So it discredits the
She
service.
actually got, precisely, I told her that. She got a lot more clients when she raised her prices than when she had them low, because they wondered why they were that low. If you're presenting yourself as a newcomer, a beginner, you don't quite know what you're doing, maybe somebody would rather go to somebody and pay a little extra to have their expertise and knowledge. But if you present yourself as an experienced person who's experienced in a related field, whatever that may be, whether it's medical work or chiropractic or massage or any number of things, you have your abilities from that field as well as what you bring to hypnotherapy. So I work with people to value themselves and to get paid what they're worth. When you respect yourself enough to ask for what you're worth, you're teaching your clients to respect themselves enough to do that. So it really
good.
magnifies when you're a healer or a coach.
Beautiful.
Being a starving healer is not a good idea.
That's right. You
Right.
can't imagine that.
I was going to talk about the 7 keys too, but you go ahead.
I love it. You've got the memory enhancement tools, and when you were talking about that, it literally feels like superpowers to me to be able to speed read and remember in photographic memory. Are these things that you are able to just give presence to because you've given yourself the verbal mindset that you can do it? Is
Well, you
that...
have a whole lot more ability than you've ever used.
Well, I know they say you only use 10% of your brain.
And
I'm
I
like,
think
really?
they discovered it's a little more than that, but it's still, there's a lot of unused stuff in there that you could be using to
I love a lot of
accomplish
empty
your goals.
space going on.
Right. Well, it's not empty, it's potential. It's
There you
full of
go.
potential.
There you go.
I
I just
like
have a
that.
lot of potential.
You have a lot of
Now,
I know. I could just think that would be so handy because I have all these guests and I would love to read more of their material and I don't have the time.
well, we'll work on that.
Mm.
You
Sounds
can
good.
double or triple your reading speed very, very rapidly. And the idea is that the faster you read, the more you remember. The faster you read, the
Oh.
more you understand. Our minds are not made to pick up things one word at a time. Our minds are made up to pick up words very rapidly. So you actually learn better when you read faster.
Good to know.
And that isn't a matter of skipping the unimportant words and so forth, because you can trip if you skip the unimportant words in technical material and so forth. I think you got to see all those words.
Yeah.
But you can cover them extremely rapidly, just bang, 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 with your eyes taking in half a line at a time is what I usually recommend. And it can go really fast, and people can get to a point where they can take in a whole page at a time, and then they're page-glance readers, and yes, people can learn to do that.
Wow.
Now, I was told when I was working with John Kappas at HMI originally, my first teacher, that you couldn't develop photographic memory with hypnosis. He believed you couldn't do that. And as long as I believed him and wasn't thinking for myself, I just didn't even try to do that. But because I decided to think for myself at one point, John and I had a discussion and I wasn't happy with him and so forth. And that was temporary. But it allowed me to go think for myself. And when somebody came to me and asked if they could learn photographic memory, I said, well, I believe you can. And I remembered that before I learned that you couldn't, before I believed that, I was able to take pictures of maps and so forth when I was a 13-year-old girl in geography class, and I couldn't read maps and so forth. I had problems with them, and I taught myself to actually take pictures of them so I could do great on the tests. And then when I believed John that you couldn't have a photographic memory, my photographic memory went away.
Wow.
But I remembered it. And when I was working in my early 20s and decided to think for myself, I started helping students to develop that photographic memory. And yes, just about anybody can develop it to some degree. Now, if somebody has said, well, I had a photographic memory when I was a kid, but now I can't remember names and faces and all sorts of other things, it's easy to bring it back. Frankly, that's very easy to do. And I do it all the time. But if somebody has never had a photographic memory, they can still develop quite a bit of ability to remember what they read, what they heard, develop what I call a phonographic memory to be able to play a teacher's lecture in your mind.
Now, one of your keys is creativity. Give some presence to what you mean by that.
Well, that means that you're able to become inspired at will. You're able to face an audience and immediately reach your top level of inspiration, so you are talking dynamically, effectively, in the best way you're capable of speaking. It means that when you sit down to write, and you are a writer who maybe has writer's block, you have a word that melts away the writer's block. Inspiration, inspiration. The writer's block simply melts away. And suddenly the words are flowing from the subconscious, from the higher consciousness, from all the places that you can get those wonderful ideas and words and ways of putting them together. And you can do that whenever you want to by being able to put yourself into that state of mind.
You know, some people they give the idea that, like, well, I'm not creative. I don't know music. I don't know painting. I'm like, oh, there's a lot more to creativity. If you're a person that knows how to organize their household and kids and activities and workload, that's creativity in itself.
Well, there's creative ways of doing that. I have a whole program that
Yeah.
uses that kind of creativity. Now, if somebody is an artist, They just need to be able to bring that inspiration to the canvas whenever they choose to paint.
Yeah.
The thing is that somebody who just waits for their muse to come to them and so forth, if they're doing that professionally, that's a little difficult.
Mhm.
There are people who start a series and now they're supposed to develop the third book in the series and they can't come up with it and everybody's mad at them because that third book isn't there yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the publisher's like,
Yeah.
hey, you've got to get it done for us.
and they've already got paid for it sometimes.
Yeah.
So this is a matter of being able to get that inspiration whenever you choose to have it.
Mm.
I've even had people who invite their future self into their mind and have their future self do their writing for them while they're sleeping, and then in the morning they just pour it out into the computer,
Oh,
and that works. So, you know.
That
Nice.
is incredible.
that sounds great.
You've got one of the keys is metaphysical exploration.
That's the platinum key.
Oh my.
The creativity is
Oh.
silver key. The platinum key for metaphysical exploration is certainly one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Because we work with telepathy, astral projection, precognition. We work with ways that you can use your acting ability or your speaking ability to really reach your audience on the metaphysical level as well as the intellectual. And just about anybody who wants to develop that spiritual spark within themselves, who can feel the light, who can feel that divine force. Perhaps they feel it in prayer, perhaps they feel it in other ways, perhaps they feel it when they hug a tree.
Hmm.
But as long as that's there, you can develop it to much higher levels. You can reach the highest levels of which you're capable in this life spiritually. Now, the jewel that I now have on the platinum key is something that I developed because I had a couple come to me, and they're actually at this convention.
Oh, cool.
I'm not going to give their names though. A couple came to me. They wanted to do relationship work, and they were people who had the highest level of metaphysical training. They were absolutely amazing in their abilities to do distance healing and distance seeing and all this stuff. And I thought, well, what can I come up with for them? Because I always want to develop people in all their ways to reach
Right.
their highest potential. So I was working with them for relationship, but I came up with something that actually took them to the next higher level spiritually. And that was a reparenting regression, which is actually now part of my bronze key for other things, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But it's creating an alternate reality where you had parents who raised you in a way that you learn to use your psychic abilities at an early age. Instead of poo-pooing your psychic experiences, they encouraged them. Instead of telling you that you couldn't really heal people, they said you could and taught you how to do it.
Yeah.
And this is an alternate reality. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of alternate realities. Or
Tell
Yeah.
us more.
Okay,
a
well,
little
alternate,
bit, but
I think there's a bunch of different
I think
realities.
We need to talk
that's
about
true.
this.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've probably seen It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he goes into an alternate reality where he was never born, and it's a ghastly alternate reality. Well,
Yeah.
none of us wants to go into a ghastly alternate reality, though it turned out that he could use it for his benefit. But you've also seen movies where somebody caught a bus and they got the great job. They didn't catch the bus, they got the great relationship instead. They met their husband and that sort of thing. There's all sorts of alternate realities. And whether you believe they are just in our minds or whether you believe they are actually existing out there, and I believe they actually exist. I believe every time we make a decision, we're creating an alternate reality.
Yeah.
Especially our major decisions in our lives. So in this alternate reality, you develop knowledge, skills, and abilities that you don't have in this one. And you are then able to use it in this reality. Now, my original training in hypnotherapy also included Emile Franchel. And he had a television show with hypnosis back in the 50s. My dad, he was a friend of my dad, so he worked with me when I was a youngster. I was 13, 14 years old, and I was working with him as well as HMI. And he had me in his Hypno Mercy Foundation to help people with cancer to be able to get rid of the pain without painkillers and that sort of thing. Imagine the shock of somebody with a 16-year-old or 14-year-old kid at their door saying, and now I'm going to help you with your cancer issues.
Oh my, yeah.
Wow.
But I did it.
You
I
did.
did it. And I wasn't working getting rid of the cancer. I was working on dealing with
Yeah.
the pain.
Yeah.
But it really helped. And what I learned about alternate realities from Emile was that he actually hypnotized someone to believe that her background was that she was raised by a prostitute, she herself was a prostitute, and she started remembering all of this and
Wow.
looking like somebody who who had been raised that way, her whole body language and everything changed. This was like a mayor's wife. She was like a really high level person in beautiful clothing and everything, and she had impeccable manners. And suddenly she became this other person entirely, who talked differently and thought differently and was the other person. And then he brought her back to, the way she was and so forth.
So he didn't leave her in that state.
He didn't leave her in that state. But the interesting thing is, you could leave somebody in that state.
Yeah.
And if he gave suggestions so that, of course, she came back to normal. When I work with somebody for improving their abilities to grow, I also have to make sure that even though that might be a more wonderful person they've become, they have to remember their current reality and who they're really married to and everything else that's real in their lives. So I have them combine the knowledge they've developed in this new reality, and maybe if they wanted to, then now we're back to the bronze key, maybe they're raised by parents who really support them in positive self-esteem and being spiritual entrepreneurs, extremely successful ones, and being able to be in a great love relationship. We usually work on 3 different things in the reparenting, regression, and the bronze key, the self-hypnosis key. Now they've become this different person, and they've sometimes lived an entirely different life. And some of them sound really different.
Wow.
Their body language is different. All of that stuff that happened in this demonstration that we had, which took this person in the other direction. He was making a demonstration. But when I'm really working with people, I want them to have both sets of memories, and they do. They actually remember their self-actualizing parents, the parents that trained them in being spiritual entrepreneurs or using their psychic abilities or whatever it is. And sometimes it's in speaking English. Suppose somebody comes from a Armenian country and they're having trouble being able to make themselves understood in English. Suppose they were now raised by parents who taught them both perfect, excellent Armenian and excellent English.
So you're
changes everything.
You're creating a reality of this is where you are, and then you're creating another reality of this is where you want to be.
Well, it's as though you were raised so you'd always been in that alternate reality.
Okay.
It's as though you were raised from the time you were a child to think of yourself as an effective psychic or an effective spiritual healer.
So you're creating
or an
these
effective
images.
entrepreneur.
You're creating language.
Yes.
Okay. Is it like, are you writing it down, or are you recording it?
Sometimes I record it, but that's not how it's getting into their subconscious minds.
Okay.
If I record it, I'm usually just recording it for training purposes when I work with a hypnotist or a healer or a coach. Otherwise, I don't usually do that. And we've discovered all kinds of really fantastic things by doing this that people are capable of that they never knew they were capable of.
Wow.
In some ways, it's like that past life regression where the person became a fantastic public speaker, because that can also happen in an alternate reality where you were trained that way, the way I was, to be a polished, effective public speaker.
Yeah.
It works for so many different things. And I wanted to finish up with the platinum key because you asked about that. We work with spiritual healing abilities and the ability to do healing in person and at a distance. We have people imagine themselves going through a hospital and doing healing in various wards and actually getting into the person's higher consciousness and talking to their higher self. Does this person want to be healed? Is this the best thing for them to be healed? So you don't just jump in there and do it whether it's time for them.
Purpose for the malady or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful with how you do this. And then we even ask at the end, do you want to keep this healing? Or do you want to simply make it a practice session? And if they want to keep the healing, the amazing thing is we've had situations where somebody reported that there had been a healing at that time.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Give some presents for the guide and the soul choosing to come here for this human experience.
There are many different experiences, that can be selected. It doesn't have to be a human experience. It could be an experience in a different dimension. It could be an experience on a different planet. It could be so many different things. When we choose to come here, we're choosing a certain kind of learning experience that we need for the growth of our spirit.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to do. And sometimes we're coming in like Bodhisattva. They're here long after they need to be here because they're helping others. So there are times when you must go back and do something important here to teach someone, to support someone. Any number of different reasons you might have to come back and make a difference in the world.
Talk about that soul evolution. What is it that the soul is doing? Is it just experiencing? Is it a thing that it has to grow?
Well, it's growing and learning.
Okay.
And that's what I believe anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a much more magnificent version of what I'm doing with people here on Earth who simply want to reach their highest potential as human beings, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. That's an important thing for them to be doing here. And it also has an effect on their their ultimate soul development.
In Journey of Souls, Newton talks about the energy of the source, the divine, breaking off into a little individuation, and that's the soul. And
That's
then
one
the
way of
soul,
looking at it.
I know, it was like,
There are many ways of
tripping
looking
my
at
mind.
it.
And he said that the soul becomes self-actualized when it goes, oh, I'm something that is different, something that's unique. And then he talks about that evolution, which was a brand new concept I'd never heard before.
Well, there's a
it's
book
different.
called Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein,
Okay.
where people are taught, thou art God. Well, it doesn't mean that you are personally God.
Yeah, you're not
but
that
it means there
being.
is this piece of God within you, this divine force, and you have the responsibility to grow that force and to behave in a way as God by doing what's good for the world as well as what's good for you.
Yeah, that's that co-creative energy versus that feeling that I got to get mine because I'm separate. And if I somehow, if you prosper, it hurts me. That's that separation.
You have to change
Yeah.
from the competitive mindset to the creative mindset.
Yeah.
And you'll find that in Waddell's Science of Getting Rich. In fact, I'm just rereading that again. And it talks about there being energy and matter and things that are not presently being used that are all around us that we can use to manifest our goals into reality on a metaphysical level.
Yeah.
But the only way of making that happen is instead of competing for it, to create.
Yeah.
Now, I learned that in my own way at the point where I decided that I was going to work with hypnosis by telephone as well as in person. I used to worry a lot about somebody getting my trade secrets and doing what I was doing next door to me and taking away my clients and so forth. That used to be a real concern of mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
Once I realized that there are no way enough healers, hypnotherapists, coaches, or anything to reach everybody in the world that speaks English even, or speaks other languages. My stuff is now being translated into Armenian and other languages.
Awesome.
When you have an unlimited number of clients, you no longer need to be in this competitive thing where you're not teaching people.
Yeah.
So in 1995, I decided to share my system of hypnotherapy with other hypnotherapists and came up with the 7-key turnkey system for building a successful healing, coaching, or hypnotherapy practice. It's now all of that.
Nice.
And I shared a great deal of what I learned with other people and really got the message across. And I got the message that I didn't have to compete with them. I remember a Yellow Page salesman coming to me around that time and showing me the different Yellow Page ads that I might get and thinking to myself, oh, here's this magnificent Yellow Page ad from this hypnotherapist, and how can I possibly compete with that? And then I looked at it and I went, whoa. This man is not my competition. This man is my customer. And I called him and he actually became my customer.
Oh, how creative that was.
That's awesome.
Well, the problem with, and this kind of gets down to what I'm doing with hypnotherapists, coaches, and the others, is that the only way to make your advertising pay, and this man's advertising was not paying, it was practically bankrupting him. Healers and hypnotists and sometimes coaches, because coaches have learned how to sell sessions in blocks, most of them now. But originally, back in 1995, they were doing the same 4 to 6 sessions per client that the hypnotists and healers and so forth were doing. And last year, in 2018, we noticed they bumped it up to about 7. Now, at Success Center, we provide a complete line of personal growth and self-improvement programs for reaching your highest potential. We average about 20 sessions per client. If we count more than 1 year, it's about 32 sessions per client. Now, it costs you just as much in time, energy, and money to bring somebody in for 4 sessions as it would to bring them in for 20 and provide them with a whole lot more value. If somebody comes to you to quit smoking, that's fine. You help them quit smoking, but now what are they going to do with the fact that they would rather make more money, they want to be in a good relationship, they want all these other things in their lives? They can go looking around for people that are going to help them to do that, or you can do it right there in your one-stop shop and help them to reach their highest potential in all those areas. They can make that 6-figure income. They can write that best-selling book. They can be in the best relationship of their lives. And you can help them to do all of that. They had enough motivation to stop smoking, which is really a nasty habit, and it's very hard to quit for many people. But they had the motivation to do that. Now they can use that same motivation to help themselves to move to the highest level in every area of their lives.
Absolutely.
I think it's being disrespectful of somebody to only deal with their presenting issue. They're a whole person. They are not whatever issue they came in as their problem.
Yeah.
The person who came in with the smoking issue was not just a smoker, and that's what they are in life. They are this spiritual being living a human life, just like we've been talking about.
So good.
And all of them can reach a much higher potential than they've done to that point.
Yeah.
So I work with hypnotists and coaches and so forth to increase their practices. I actually guarantee them referrals, 25 client leads and referrals a week, and we're the only ones who do that.
Nice.
Well,
give presents to your website while we're here.
www.acesuccess.com. And our phone number is 800-GOAL-NOW. GOALNOW 462-5669. So if you want to accomplish your goal now, you'll call that number.
That's a great marketing number. I love it. You must have had a father in marketing.
Yeah, my dad was obviously the one who started the hula hoop craze in the 50s. You bet I had a father in marketing.
What a fun story.
I love it. Oh, so many things we could talk about, I think.
So I wanted to finish up with the other keys, though. Ruby key is relationship, choosing, finding, and attracting a life mate. And we actually work with consciously deciding who the best person is for you and how you can be the best person for them. And how you can attract that person into your life as a permanent life mate. We work with neuro-linguistic programming, which is a way of speaking to another person in the same language they're thinking in, whether it's audio, visual, or kinesthetic, whether they tend to be more motivated by loss or gain. There's all sorts of things that go into the way a person makes a decision about whether to go out with you, whether to see you again, whether to marry you. And once you learn how to talk to them in that way, they are more likely to connect with you. This isn't a matter of faking it. It's a matter of walking a mile in their moccasins and actually understanding what they want and what their needs are. So instead of taking somebody who might be a visual out for a symphony, you're going to take them out for a beautiful sunset and that sort of thing. I teach a lot of things under the Ruby Key, including how to get rid of fear of commitment, fear of approaching an attractive member of the opposite sex, or if you're gay, the same sex. I work with people for relationships of all different kinds, including polyamorous relationships. If you believe you can love and be committed to more than one significant other, that's also available.
Do you work with men that have the fear of their wives having an open relationship?
Oh, yes. I'm the founder of Live the Dream, which I founded in 1987 for people interested in multiply committed relationships, group marriage, and group living. And on the third Saturday of every month, and by the way, that's livethedream.org, on the third Saturday of every month, I provide very inexpensive coaching for people with those kind of issues. It's something like $8 for the whole day to join us for a meeting where we talk about how to attract the person you're looking for, how to get rid of jealousy, how to maybe relate to something like Stranger in a Strange Land, where a science fiction author has written about this sort of thing, how to bring it into real life. We do a lot of different things there. And if somebody wants private sessions with me, of course, that's hypnotherapy, and we do that too, and coaching. The diamond key is success. And that also works with neuro-linguistic programming. That's for being able to increase your sales. And if you talk to somebody in the same language they're thinking in, they feel more comfortable with you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell their friends about you, and they'll be right because you understand their needs better than anyone else does. What we do with hypnosis is we put this into your subconscious mind, your child mind, so it's as though Tony Robbins, that's what he's using, has been following you around, helping you to sell better since you were 5 years old. So you can use it with the kind of unconscious mastery that he does. This generally doubles or triples your close rate. You can put any NLP teacher that you like best in there, if it's Tad James or whoever. It becomes part of you, so you can use it with unconscious mastery. I also work with helping people remove blocks to being more successful than their dad was, removing blocks that come from not thinking you're worth it, any number of things. And I work with the nitty-gritty of actual step-by-step, how do I do it? How do I go to a mixer and get leads there? How do I follow up on those leads? How do I become the best salesperson I can be? And how do I ask my boss for a raise, for that matter? because I work a lot with people that are not entrepreneurs who might work for somebody.
Right.
You can raise your income that way too. I have so many different ways for them to raise their income and work smarter rather than harder, so that when they retire, they have enough coming in that they're working only because they want to rather than because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
So the Hypnotic Fountain of Youth is available. Again, call 800-GOAL-NOW, 462-5669. And the web address is acesuccess.com. And please visit us there. And thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Thank you.
Good. At the end of the show, what we love to do is have the guest give presents to, if there's one thing you take away from my work, it's this one thing. What would that be for you?
The legacy that I'm actually leaving for the world, that I have finally bringing to fruition literally in the next few weeks, is Reach for the Stars. Reach for the Stars is a way to have hypnotic recordings going at night as you're sleeping to help you reach your highest potential in every area: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial. And they're done in a planned way, just like my planned multiple session packages are. And the person is growing in every way at night as they sleep.
Oh, love it.
And they can reach their highest level in every area of their lives. And if they want private sessions, of course, they can call me for those. 800-GOAL-NOW, 462-5669, or look us up on the web, acesuccess.com, and ask about Reach for the Stars.
Love it.
Thanks for joining us here on Exploring the Human Journey. You can find us as a video on YouTube or listen to us as a podcast. You can also join in the conversation by following us on Facebook and Instagram. For more information, go to the website at exploringthehumanjourney.com.